Greetings and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that for 5 years has enjoyed teasing a certain Square Enix RPG. I'm your host David Lloyd, and at the pub we're going to have a much different conversation about Octopath Traveler than we're used to having here. With the release of Octopath Traveler II, we actually have a few good things to say about it now. One person that has probably been waiting 5 years for this episode to finally happen, who's with me here now, it's Jordan Rudick.
I want to know if we have even close to 5 bad things to say about it. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think, like, just our conversations about the game. We've been kind of playing it in tandem, in lockstep with one another. And yeah, just it's funny for us to be so, I mean, we are on the same page about other games like Triangle Strategy and stuff like that. Maybe it's the HD 2D bug getting into us, but yeah, it's been fun kind of going through this game together, basically, and just talking about our exploits and what we're enjoying and things that we're kind of picking up on. But yeah, I was just saying to you before we started recording that the sentiment online, everyone who plays this game and picks it up seems to be just kind of floored by it and really getting into it. So it's been nice to see. And yes, I will take this as part of the Jordan Octopath Redemption Tour. It's a win for me.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm happy for Team Asano. I feel like they do, other than the first Octopath Traveler, I've liked everything else they've done. So it's kind of weird that there's such a revulsion against the first one. But I think you had mentioned to me the other day that I might have to replay the first one to see if maybe it got me at a bad time or something. But I still feel like some of the issues I had with the first one will still be present, but I'm happy for this one. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like it's doing as well potentially money wise. So hopefully it's doing better than in the West. I think it's only down like 20% or something in Japan, so hopefully it's less than that on the Western side. But it's hard to tell. But I mean, at the same time, I also feel like 20% could easily be the Nintendo collectors who bought the first Octopath because it was published by Nintendo and never actually played the game. Like that could easily be 20% of the money right there.
It's funny. It's a funny thing about when you go from a console exclusive, at least for a time, the first game was, and then now it's a multi-plat release at launch. To see how things change, right? Like you lose a little bit of that prestige, when you are on multiple platforms. Like, yes, it is more accessible to more people and the audience of potential customers is larger, but at the same time, you don't get as much of the promotional bump. Like, yes, there was a demo with this game, but I don't think it had the same kind of marketing push that the first game did, right? Like Nintendo, this game came up a bunch of times, right? It came up originally with the first demo, and then they got the feedback, and then I think they either released a second demo or at the very least, like there was another kind of bump when they talked about all the changes they were going to make for the first game. So you just felt like a little bit more aggressive marketing, with maybe Nintendo having more of a handle on that, or more influence over it for sure.
More exposure in the Nintendo Directs.
Yeah, exactly. And this time, like, I don't think Octopath Traveler 2 came up in any Sony presentations or anything like that. Like I'd almost forgotten that it was coming to Sony platforms until close to launch. Honestly, like I knew it was coming to Switch for sure. And I thought it was coming elsewhere, but I wasn't sure where it was going to show up. And so I think that speaks to kind of, the Square Enix's approach. There's also the fact that, like, they're releasing so many games these days that it's hard to stand out now for a game like this. They have HD 2D with the first game. That was a big selling point because like that, it was one of the first games to do that. But now we've had a bunch of these, and so that isn't the key kind of selling point necessarily that it was. It doesn't have that same cachet. Maybe having a few games like that come out now. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like you said, with the exclusivity. I know a lot of people have been complaining about Final Fantasy 16 being a PS5 exclusive, and that's going to, hurt sales and stuff. But then it's like you said, Sony's been pushing it on top of Square Enix pushing it. So it makes you wonder, like maybe exclusivity doesn't prevent sales as much as people think. Or
I mean, people we don't like it, but at the same time, like. Yeah, I think it's going to sell. I think FF16 is going to sell incredibly well. We'll have to talk about that game at some point, even before launch. I do have some hot takes. I'll just tease that now. I do have some hot takes about that game after all the recent preview coverage. But Yeah, it is. We'll see. I can see a game like Octopath Traveler 2 having a long tail, like with more people playing this game, post launch, and that word of mouth and buzz kind of, just kind of simmering as we go over the next couple of months. There aren't. I mean, I'm trying to think like what are the games coming out, that would have an overlapping audience, I suppose. Like a Dragon came, or sorry, yeah, Like a Dragon Ishin came out. You've got Metroid Prime, which came out. I mean, there isn't really an overlap there. I'm thinking about turn-based RPGs. Atelier Ryza got delayed till April, so there wasn't necessarily direct competition, but March is kind of a funny time. Like I don't know, how many people are like, super gung ho about sequels to games in March. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see. I think it'd have a long tail.
Yeah, we could even see in April and May when there's not as much. I guess May is
May's
Tears of
Zelda.
the Kingdoms, though,
Obviously,
right?
that's a big one, right? Yeah.
So
And then
I don't know. We'll see.
June we were kind of expecting Starfield, but that got delayed to September, right? So
Yeah,
now June is basically belongs to FF16, which I'm sure Square is happy about, right?
yeah, yeah. And then there's a couple of Legend of Hero games coming out. I guess I didn't realize the Trails of Azure was then like a week from now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gosh, that's a huge game, and then
July for the Trails to Reverie.
right, gosh, and then there's another one too, Boundless Trails. Is that later in the year? Maybe?
I don't know if they've given. I've heard it's October, but I don't think they've actually given a date yet.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, more daunting numbers and staggering hours to file away. But
and here I'm going to retro video game stores coming out with 10 packs of games. My latest haul was an 8-game bounty from for a bunch of Square Enix PS2 games. So
if you go to any more retro stores, your next stop after that's going to be like the marriage counselor, I think, because you're going to have a hard time continuing to defend purchasing the entire Square Enix library.
I'm going to have to start hiding my Visa so it doesn't get taken away.
That's right. You have your own card and your own name, and you're good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I want to get into Octopath Traveler 2. Like, this game is, ever since it got announced, obviously, I was super excited about it. David, when did you kind of turn? Can you think of like when you turned to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick up this game, or when did you make that decision that you were going to get in on this?
I would say I was probably always going to get it just because it's Square Enix and it's Team Asano, and it's like I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I figured like one of the things I feel with like Square Enix and Team Asano in particular is that they seem to really take criticism to heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see these multiple demos coming out before the launch. I know like even Bravely Default 2 I think changed quite a bit from its first demo that came out when people were complaining or making observations, let's put it that way. And a lot of changes were made, and so I feel like that they were going to take what people didn't like about the first Octopath and at least make some kind of effort to fix what people didn't like or try to improve on the original. So I was always going to kind of get it, but I wouldn't say I was excited until I played the demo.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, this is feeling good. Like this is feeling better. Obviously it didn't quite give the same, you didn't really get into it because you only really got to play as one character, but even like right off the bat, it just felt like an improvement already. The characters were looking at each other. I mean, there's your first,
really that's the proof in the pudding right there. Yeah. Is there any eye contact whatsoever? And so they really needed to push that a little bit harder in the marketing of the game maybe, but it was cool to kind of see. I guess it made sense that you were going to pick up the game eventually, but I suppose like the almost wholly positive interactions we've had talking about the game has been I guess a pleasant surprise for me. Like I know that we can be harsh critics sometimes of the things we love, and I think that I was ready to maybe see flaws in this game and like really maybe want the best from it, and if it wasn't going to get that, I could easily just call a spade. But the world is it just feels so much more full and realized. Like it's not, there aren't these barren environments. Every environment feels different. Like you run into like just random areas, dungeons. All the dungeons feel different to me. I love that, like, within each chapter, you're not necessarily fighting a boss. You're not necessarily, going into a dangerous area and doing the same thing. You might be, maybe doing like a little bit more of a rescue mission, or kind of just talking to people, or searching for a particular item or something like that. Like, they have really changed up the variety of the chapters too. The fact that, you can have multiple chapter twos, for example, the fact that characters have dedicated kind of partner chapters where they actually link up and do like a mini chapter together. Like, it's such a cool it's such a cool way of bringing, if not the whole cast together, at least creating these kind of odd couples that are really fun to see interact with one another. Like the one I did with the cleric Temenos and the thief Throne.
Oh, right.
Like, they seem a little bit of an odd couple on the surface. You have a thief who kind of has the heart of gold, and then you have a cleric or priest who isn't fully committed to what he's preaching, right? And so they're a really funny pairing, and I'm eager. I haven't done too many of those. I'm eager to see more of those kind of matchups, because that was something that was sorely missing from that first game, was that kind of more genuine interactivity between the characters. Like, yeah, you have the little side conversations, but that's not really the same as like actually going on a mission with the characters, and you see them kind of talking the whole time and engaging with one another. Like that's I think a lot more of what we were looking for with the sequel.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's even when you mentioned the Temenos and Throne. So there, I did that one, and there was, I don't know if have you done the Throne's chapter 2 with the when she goes looking for father?
Yeah, I did the mother and father ones. Yeah.
Okay, because there was another neat interaction between them during that one where he had mentioned, like, they were talking about villains and stuff, and she was like, "Oh, saying to Temenos, you see me as a good person," and he goes, "Yes, you're a good person who's dressed up as a villain."
Yeah,
like,
that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, like those are the things that I didn't feel like those weren't in the first game at all from my memory. Like these little, like, it's not like they have to be doing all these things together at any given time, but it's just like these moments that are perfect. Like they just give the characters that much more depth. Seeing them interact with each other, have fun with each other. There was I love the party banter. Like, there would be moments where, and it's all depending on who's in your party at any given time. Like, there was one, I think I was doing an Oswald. It was either chapter 2 or chapter 3, and I had Oshette with me, and Oshette was like, "Oh, your beard looks like it's nice and fluffy, like I can't remember the elder's name.
The big lion-like creature that had a big mane to a big beard. Yeah.
She's like, "Do you mind if I sleep on it sometime?" And he's like, "Let me think on that."
Yeah, yeah. So, I thought he was going to tell her off too, but he does kind of have a soft spot, for characters here and there. Yeah. I literally just had that same interaction this morning when I was playing a bit of the game too. Those moments happened a little bit in the first game, but they didn't feel maybe as genuine, or they felt a little bit more forced, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas in this game, like, they're all over the place. Like, sometimes it's a little bit more emotional, sometimes it's a little bit more humorous or lighthearted, and so you're getting a lot of variety of those kind of small kind of tidbit type interactions too. And yeah, gosh, I mean, that's one of the, so I think that is one of the key ways that they have improved with this game. Obviously they've kind of just taken the same battle system. They haven't really changed the battle system very much, but just going back to it again after having not really replaying the first game, I'm reminded of just how captivating the combat is here. Like, I absolutely adore it. The boss battles were like halfway through a boss battle, almost every time the boss will change, right? They will either get a new weakness, lose one. They'll like summon like soldiers to kind of defend them, and then some of their weaknesses will be gated off. You can't even hit that part of them. You were saying, that they charge up. They have like a super move that they're about to hit you with, and if you don't break them, they're going to devastate your team.
Yeah.
But all of the battles, they take longer than you might think, but not overly long. Like, I think every boss battle ends kind of at the perfect moment. You're like, just before you're like, oh gosh, when is this guy going to die? And then that's when it ends. Like, you're like, oh, I've got, I'm going to just throw the kitchen sink at them right here. I think I'm about to take them down. And you're either going to kill them right then and there, or it's going to take like one more hit, you know? So it's constantly delivering those satisfying combat encounters that I loved from the first game. They've come back here with a vengeance. I feel like um, I don't know if you did Partitio's Chapter 2, but on the kind of main screen when the characters are talking, you fight like this dog, and the dog is really tiny, right? Like you see it looks really tiny on the screen, but then the battle screen opens up, and it's this huge like screen filling. It looks like a big Rottweiler or something like that. It's just a hilarious transition that I couldn't help but laugh at.
Yeah.
That was a memorable just scene in the game that I thought. But yeah, combat, everything. I mean, we're still kind of in the initial impressions here, and it's just so wholly positive. I think like it is everything I wanted it to be. I might have some like of the smallest scrapes ever with the map and stuff, but I'm just enjoying savoring this game, which I don't think I played the first game like that. I think that I really just did not put the first one down and let it breathe at all. I just kind of, not that I mainlined it, but I was only playing that. I was playing, 4 to 5 hours a day kind of thing. Whereas this one, like it's 1 or 2 chapters a night, and it's a really nice.
Yeah, I just love how, like, in the first game, I felt like I was just doing a circle around the map and just kept going in circles. And, you start with, okay, I'm going to do this character, and then I'm just following a circle clockwise. I pick up the next, I pick up the next, I picked up the next. Oh, now it's I'm back to the first person again, and now we're doing chapter 2. Oh, now we're doing chapter 2, the second person. And it was so linear and like boring to me. Like, it's like, oh, I forgot what this person was doing like 10 hours ago. Like, now we're going back to them. Whereas this map feels it's almost like Skyrim to me in a certain extent, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm just walking along. I'm not really going in any direction per se. I'm just like following a path, and I'm in a new town. I'm like, what's going on in this town? And it's like, oh, well, there could be, the merchant chapter, or it could be a dancer chapter, or you could just walk around and maybe there's like little mini side quests for just the people in the village, or you can find out information from certain people, so I'm just walking around, going wherever I please, just kind of unlocking, because there's like that fog of war on the map sort of thing, where it's like when you get to a new area, it kind of like unlocks on the map. And I think one of the great strengths of it too is that there's fast travel everywhere. So like,
it's fantastic.
It's great. It gives you that benefit of like, well, just go out and explore. It's perfectly fine. You're never really going to run into a character. There's little like side paths that aren't really leading to anywhere that have the really tough monsters that might kill you if you're under leveled. But for the most part, any of the main paths from each city are like the enemies are pretty easy to dispatch.
And the game tells you, like, if you're going into an area that you shouldn't be in, right? Like, it tells you
the
what the
danger
required,
level.
the danger level, which kind of tells you like what your required kind of average level of your party should be. So there's really no excuse for wandering into a place where you shouldn't be, because the game tells you, yes, you can be here, no, you shouldn't, or what kind of risk you're putting yourself at. Yeah. One of the fun things early on in the game is like going somewhere you're not supposed to and grabbing a treasure chest or two, because it's going to be like really high powered stuff. So you might be able to pick up like a really strong weapon that you're not supposed to have, as long as you hightail it out of there before you get into an enemy encounter, right? Where they'll probably wipe your party. But yeah.
Well, that brings me to like the inventory management. Like it's extremely simple. Like I love that you could just go into, you can have any amount of people, like you can have any combination of the different characters, and you just hop in and you hit optimize, and it optimizes everybody that's in your party and any of the free equipment that you might just have kind of lying around in your inventory.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing any kind of like, oh, well, what does, I've just brought in the thief, what does she need? Oh, I'm bringing in Oswald, and then like have to manually go through everyone, and then it's like, oh, I need to unequip this character for this so that I can give the good axe to this character. Like, I'm not dealing with any of that crap. It's just like I'm just flying, I'm just having fun,
I mean, frankly, every RPG with equipment, like an equipment system like this, should have an optimize button. Like it just should be one of those standard things. And now I'm going to chastise any game that comes out that doesn't have something like that. That's been really great, and it makes a ton of sense when you talk about characters who can have secondary job classes, which opens up more weapons that they can equip. You don't want to be going through 3 or 4 different weapons on a character to check and make sure that all of them are the best one.
Yeah.
You just want to be able to hit a button and say, okay, now my character has, in addition to like having a lance and an axe, now they've got a sword and a bow. Okay, that's good. I don't want to equip 4 different weapons on them every time I go into the menus. I just want to press a button and have it choose the best ones for me. So yeah, definitely a nice quality of life thing there. I can't remember the first game had it. It might have, but regardless, it is one of those features I want to see all the time now.
And I definitely feel like they've upped their visual game on everything. Like, I remember the first game being very, very beautiful. Everything looked like, I love the pixel graphics. Obviously, like you said, it was the first 2D HD. So you had that kind of initial wow factor. But now I just feel like there's a few scenes where it's like, whoa, like you're just like, this is incredible. Like a few things that stand out. Like there's the beginning of the Hikari storyline. Like when you first get Hikari and he's like standing up on the kind of the hill, and he's kind of looking out at the city, and then looks down at the battlefield, and like that's beautiful. There's another opera scene where they're in like this massive theater, and there's a woman that's singing opera, and I'm like, holy moly, like this is
it is incredible. I mean, they've clearly, even from Triangle Strategy, which we're not that far away from. I think they've taken another leap, definitely, in terms of the visuals and just how to work with this graphical style, this engine. Yeah. You're right. You pointed out a couple of great scenes. I think just anytime you're like wandering through the wilderness and you see like a waterfall, where you take your little rowboat into the canal or something like that, I think all of that just is just immaculate. Like, I can't believe that we're playing a game like that in 2023. It seems unreal to me. Like,
the rainbows in those waterfalls are like the effects are incredible. Like
all of the water effects, they really impressed me in Triangle Strategy. It was something that I made sure to point out in my review because I was kind of taken aback by how gorgeous it was. And again, they've one upped themselves here. Like, it is even better in this game. And I just like I never find like going between the towns, like wandering those different kind of those paths and the forest and the hills, that wherever you're going, I never find that a chore. I did find it a little bit of a chore in the first game because you just didn't have that kind of striking scenery as much. You had the music, which helps, but the music returns with a vengeance here, and it's so good. Oh my gosh! Like we could talk more about that later, and I know you're going to throw some into the episode, but man, this soundtrack is. It lives up to the original and then some. Like, I think the battle theme is incredible. Like, the boss theme is so good. Even the main theme, just when you boot up the game, half the time when I started, I don't go right in. I just let it play a little bit because it's so. And then we haven't even talked about this yet, but the fact that you can change day and night at any time
on the fly,
it adds so much because you get the visual change, the music change, and then your party members gain different kind of those what are those abilities called? The
I don't remember the name for them, but
there is a name for them. They got grappling abilities or something like that, or
something like that. They each got like, well, it's funny. They each have an ability for day, and then they all have another one for night.
That's right.
So it's hilarious when you go walk up to somebody now, and you have like 4 or 5 different icons pop up above the character, whether you can like knock them out or steal their belongings, or charm them into giving up information, or having you guide them to places. Like there was one, I can't remember the towns. There's so many towns I can't even keep track of them all. But there's one town where I walked outside. I was on my way to another town, and I ended up in this. What's the grape farms, the winery or vineyard. So I'm walking through a vineyard, and there's like a farmer complaining about, the grapes aren't growing properly, and this is so terrible. And then I was thinking, like, I remember some guy in this other town that was talking about how he was this wonderful grape grower. So I'm like, okay, I'll go see what he's doing. And so I went over to the town, and he was just kind of in a bar having a beer, talking about how great he was. So I'm like, okay, I'll get him to follow me. So I took him to this farm, and then this was like a mini quest because they're all like colored. The villagers have like a colored brown, like a chat thing where there's going to be a mini quest. So I brought this guy, and and he told him what he was doing wrong. And then so you get money and you get this. I think I got like a few healing grapes or something. But now the vineyard, I can just walk into the vineyard whenever I want and pick up a bunch, like the healing grape bunch. So
Oh
it's like
yes, yes, for heal everybody at once.
for
Yeah,
heal everybody, and I'm like, holy crap! I just walked out of here with like 8 of these,
yeah.
and it's
Oh,
like,
that's so cool. I haven't even
yeah,
come across that, but I love that idea of like the world kind of changing based on you completing a side quest, right? Like you,
yeah,
but I love when you kind of do a side quest and there's that benefit you get immediately, the reward you get immediately, which is the gold and the items, but it actually changes the world in some way so that you're getting a maybe a continuous benefit, that you can keep coming back there, and the fact that it just changes the world, right? Like you can see maybe the it's gone from like this barren vineyard to like it's lush and overflowing with greenery now, like just something
yeah.
like that can happen. um that this game adds something. I don't remember that something like that happening in the first game. I remember the side quests kind of being a little bit more pedestrian, but they do seem a little bit more involved and interesting here. Like just having to bring people to certain places or having to find a number of items for them. Like, oh, maybe they want to try all these different things in the world. So you got to bring them somewhere or bring them like special items that you've bought or stolen from somebody. They do feel a little bit more involved, all those side quests that I've come
Yeah.
across so far. I've only completed a handful of them.
Well, even there's so many small details too. Like each town, you can have a different reputation in each town that can go up or down depending on your actions. Which I was like, man, this is like incredibly complicated
Mhm.
with like how much detail they have in this. Because like when you do a couple side, I did one side quest and it was like, oh well, now you can get better. I think it was like the towns, the equipment or something from the stores or whatever. Like I was getting a discount now because like
Yeah, that's right.
the town was happy with like what I was doing to help them out and stuff. So I'm like, oh, that's nice. So I'm like, man, I gotta start looking for these. And then the other, I think you had mentioned about getting the secondary job, and I'm like, man, I wasn't even looking for that.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I just came across a couple of them just in the towns. Like I went inside a building and I found like the apothecary one. I talked to a guy, and he randomly just gave me the warrior one. I think he was like in a school, like some kind of martial arts school, like
Yeah, I just got
training
that one
people.
too.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm like, getting the warrior one's a really good one because adding those two weapons to any class is really helpful. I found, but yeah, and so now I'm like really scouring the towns pretty carefully just to make sure I don't miss one of those things, right? Like you want
yeah,
to make sure you're getting all the crucial items that are you can kind of see when you're buying items or stealing them or whatever, you can see which ones are going to be used for side quests. So I'll always try to go through all the people in town and see if they have a side quest related item. And if I could just stockpile those for when I come across the side quest eventually, or when I go back to old places to maybe complete some stuff. But I mean, there's just so much to do in every town. Whether you can talk to people on the surface, and then there's like they're called path actions. I had to look it up; it was killing me. The path
okay,
actions, like there's 5 or 6 different path actions you can do for every townsperson, basically, right? Like
yeah,
so, there's so much that you're gaining knowledge from them. You are maybe having them join your party temporarily as a summonable character, or you're stealing or buying items for them. Like I just love that there's so many ways you can interact with the basic kind of and nothing kind of NPCs. Like they're not really important, but this game kind of heightens their utility. I guess it makes them more meaningful to you as a player, and I think that's a really cool thing that we don't see in a lot of RPGs.
yeah. It was funny that in that the grape grower thing that I was talking about. So I didn't realize that I went and did the quest, and the grapes are being grown, but I didn't realize he was still following me.
Oh,
And so
nice. Yeah,
so I got into a fight, and then one of Porticio's actions was have the grape grower attack, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know he was here. Sure, why not? Like, let's
yeah.
see what he can do. He came out and he wrecked everyone
Oh, really?
because
Oh, I was gonna say the
yeah,
opposite.
because I
That's
couldn't
really good.
believe he was like I think there's like 8 levels of strength for
Yes,
NPCs, and
yes,
he was
yes.
a 6 out of 8.
Oh,
And
wow,
I'm like, oh wow, okay,
that's
I
really high. Yeah.
might need to try this out one time when on someone important, because I could, yeah, it was. I couldn't believe the amount of strength that this old farmers had. Came out with an axe and just tore everyone to
I
shreds.
was surprised he was actually like a damage dealer. I thought, okay, if he's a farmer, he's probably going to be like maybe heal you with the grapes or something, or
Yeah,
give you a buff or something like that. But Yeah,
Nope, just chop their heads off with an
that's
axe.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good. Who's been the kind of your go-to party? Like, who have you been kind of gravitating towards? I imagine you're kind of cycling through them, like I'm doing, because you want to keep everybody's levels up so you can go through their different chapters. But kind of right now, like, who do you want to have in your party the most? Obviously, you've got, your starting character has to stay there.
Yeah.
But are there anyone else you're gravitating towards for their skill set?
So Throne was the first character I chose. So I always have a thief, and I found a lot of her actions are very useful. Like the surprise attack, uh, when it's charged right up, it really wrecks
Yeah,
the
yeah,
characters. Like so, she's very very useful against boss fights. And then her latent ability is that she can do 2 turns in one round.
yeah. Right.
So that's very useful. One of the strategies I've been doing is using the latent ability to use. She has like an armor debuff so I'll use that on the boss and then just nail them with a surprise attack.
Yeah, right, right.
So that does great. My second favorite character is Hikari, because he does his latent ability is like this shadow. It's I don't want to get too into the detail of why he has this ability because it's a bit of a spoiler on the storyline, but he has this shadow ability and it does incredible damage. Like it's crazy, especially when it's charged up.
It looks like, at least the top one, the big sword attack that he does. It looks like,
Yeah,
I think Cloud's limit break. I think it was called, one of them was called Cliff Hazard or Clim Hazard or something. It looks just like that, where he
yeah,
kind of goes up and like slices them up down the, like kind of down the middle from the bottom.
yeah.
I know I've seen that kind of move before, and I think Cloud had one like that in FF7. It's, gosh, that ability is so strong. Like, if you can power up his offense, and then you max 4 BP with that limit break type of, that latent ability type attack. Gosh, that's the damage dealer right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then I try to have one of the magic, so either Oswald or Temenos in the party at any given time.
Yeah.
So I'll usually kind of flip flop them depending on who I want to, like whether it's one of their storylines or if I just need to, like one is getting overpowered compared to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other characters, like Casty's useful in the sense of like keeping people healthy, because usually there's, you fight a boss and you need some kind of healer. So I usually have her in if Temenos isn't around for sure, to have that extra healer. And then I guess Castian, or sorry, Oshette, the Beastling Hunter. I was had like she was my least used person for a while, but then a couple of her attacks actually do pretty decent damage.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been leaning more towards her, but I guess Oshette and Particio are probably my least two used characters for the most part.
Yeah. So we're in lockstep a little bit there. I started with Oswald, so I've always got the Scholar. I love having him. Like, I just couldn't get away from that kind of passive ability that he has when you join a fight, and he always reveals one of the weaknesses. Like, it's just so
Mm-hmm.
helpful. Like, I can't get over how important that is, and especially in a boss fight. Like, it might take you some time to figure out what all their weaknesses in, but if you go into the beginning of the fight and you know what one of them is, it gives you a little bit more time to kind of figure out what the rest of them can be. So you're not kind of just randomly choosing attacks and hoping it hits, or hoping it starts to break them down. So I love him. I haven't been using Hikari as much. Like, I kind of recognize how strong he is, but I guess I've been I kind of saved his like chapter 2 for the end, so I might keep him around for a little while. I guess I know how strong he is. I just find him a little boring. Like, I like the kind of versatility and the maybe variety of the other characters a little bit more. I know, like, end game, Hikari is definitely going to be like in my party, like for taking out some of the final bosses. And I have no idea what's waiting in the second half of the game, but
Mm-hmm.
I know he'll be around. I'm surprised by I don't like Ochette's like her class abilities, like her capturing the monsters and then using the monsters. I don't like that. I just don't like that mechanic in RPGs. I always kind of stray away from it. But her latent ability, where she gets like these kind of beast level attacks, beast mode attacks, basically, they're so powerful. I can't
Yeah,
believe how strong they
they're
are.
nuts.
Like she's not even like leveled up that much for me. She's probably one of my lower level characters, but those attacks still hit for over 4,000 damage, especially the one that hits the single opponent. I can't believe how strong that is. So having her around for boss fights just seems very smart. I think she can deal a ton of damage kind of deceptively because you're not even really using her inherent abilities. Like you're just kind of using her, I guess the ones that come up, and she's got like one axe cleaving type ability that just does a ton of damage too. So she's surprisingly effective in battle, even though you're not using her full kit.
I like
Um,
the thing I
yeah,
like that they've added for her too is that they have an ability that unlocks where 25% of the time when she defeats a character, she just automatically captures it so that you don't have
yes,
to
yes,
actually do
it's
the work.
very helpful. Yeah,
I
I
think,
like
yeah,
that
that's,
too.
I love that.
Because then you don't have to worry about actually doing the capturing, like weakening enemies, like it's Pokemon, and then capturing them. It'll just do it for you without thinking. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to kind of take that mechanic out of your hands when if you're not super interested in it. So I have enjoyed seeing that one too. Um, I like Temenos. I think his healing is incredibly strong. The fact that he only really does light in terms of elemental attacks, he only does light. And I don't know how useful his other abilities are. Like two of his ability slots are taking up with that light, the single light element attack, and then the one that hits everybody. So that's kind of frustrating. And he's got some decent healing for sure. But I don't know how often I want to use him just because he feels a little bit more one dimensional to me.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm wondering about when I'm hoping there's a secondary job for the scholar, and it would be pretty neat to give him the scholar and the cleric
oh yeah,
jobs.
yeah,
And now, like, because he already has high MP to begin with,
that's right.
so now you give him all the offense and all the defense, and he probably be pretty powerful, I would think.
Yeah, the same goes for the scholar, right? You could give
Yeah,
the scholar or the cleric the secondary ability, and then you could have either one could be in your party, and they both serve the healing and offensive magic role that you need. So yeah, it's kind of nice the fact that you can just equip secondary classes to anybody at any time. You can kind of mix and match like that. Love that for sure. I find having Particio in the party very helpful because his ability to give BP, which are basically your just they work the same as in Bravely Default. Those are kind of like your action points. He can
yeah,
donate BP to anyone else in the party, and you can even cash in BP to have him donate multiple BP to another character. So if he's sitting on three, I could throw three of those over to Oswald, power him up instantly, and if he's got his latent ability ready to go, we're going to put a lot of damage that turn.
yeah,
Um, and his latent ability is actually incredibly powerful too because he just fills up his 5 BP automatically.
yeah.
Like there's a lot to like about Particio. Even as a character, he's growing on me a little bit. Like his kind of
His unbridled enthusiasm.
he's very enthusiastic. he's very positive.
Yeah,
He's got that folksy kind of southern way of speaking. But he is grow. I didn't like him at first, but he's growing on me, and the fact that he's also effective in combat for kind of buffing other characters with BP means I could see him sticking around in my party. I remember at the end of Octopath Traveler, the first game, there are just some insane boss fights that are like some of the hardest I've ever played. Having that ability to donate battle points from one character to another was basically the saving grace of me during those boss fights in the first game. So I could see Particio, or at least the merchant class, playing a major role later on in the game. And even now, I'm using it a lot. So I do like that part about him.
yeah.
Um, Cassie's probably going to get the least use for me. Actually, I don't like the mixing of herbs. I would rather have someone else do the healing. And I don't think her latent ability is all that useful. Where you just get to use the concoction that you make a concoction out of 2 items for free. Like I don't see
Yeah.
that as being super helpful. So I think of all the characters, she'll probably be out of my party the least, or sorry, out of my party the most. And Just not. I'm just gonna level her up to see her 4 chapters through. But
So what I did with her is Hikari is way over leveled, so I'm like, okay, I gotta stop using Hikari. So I gave Casti the warrior
oh
secondary.
yeah, yeah,
So now I'm like, okay, now I can keep Casti in to make sure she's at the levels of everyone else, but
right.
she's with a much more useful role.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do, right? You take someone who maybe is under leveled, you give them a good secondary job class so that when they come in under level, they still have something they can do for you, right?
Yeah,
Um, I think now that I'm done all the second chapters and at least Oswald's third, I think I kind of want to go around the world and start collecting the secondary job classes just to make an easier time of any grinding up that I need to do for anybody. And and I don't want to put that message out into the world that you have to grind a lot in this game. You don't. You just have to make sure you're bringing in characters that are under leveled kind of periodically, right? Like every time I do a new chapter, obviously I'll need that the one character whose chapter it is, but I'll also bring in someone new just to make sure that I'm kind of cycling through and everyone's getting a little bit of experience. So that's enough. The way
yeah,
the experience kind of scales, that at the lower levels you don't need much to gain a level, and then obviously it's not even later on. Like you're not fighting a ton of battles. You don't need to fight a ton of battles to gain a level from like 26 to 27 or something like that. And then
no, it's
the
very
boss
quick,
fights give
very
you a lot too.
natural.
Yeah,
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 yeah. There's one boss that I ended up beating, and I had two people that were, I guess you could consider them under leveled, but then as soon as the boss fight was done, I think they went up like 5 levels. I'm
yeah.
like, okay,
Exactly. It's
well, I'm
great.
good.
It's really good to see. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's basically all the grinding you need to do is just bring them to one boss fight, and they'll catch right up, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know about you, just in terms of difficulty. Have you found the game difficult? Have you experienced a lot of game overs? Like, what would you say in terms of how with the challenge level with this game?
I feel like the challenge level for me is perfect. It straddles the line of difficult and frustrating and never crosses it. Like there's been a couple boss battles where I got a game over, and it's like, okay, well, I wasn't very smart in my strategy, so I'll have to just rethink what I did here. And I think the toughest boss battle I had might have been the guard in Oswald's chapter 3,
Hmm.
where you go into like the guard station, and he brings in soldiers to protect himself. I think, well, part of my problem was I had a few hundred level people, so I had like Oswald and Throne were higher level, but then I was like, oh, this is what I'll bring in. Like I think I had Castino shit, and I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out with these people, and then I like got wrecked, and I'm like, okay, so it all came down to with so the guard. Believe that was the boss where it was like there was 5 weaknesses, but you only had access to 2 at any given time, and then it kept growing, like how many times you had to hit them.
Yeah, he goes up to like 7 or 8 halfway through the battle, and then
Yeah,
if he has the guards in front of him, half of his weaknesses are locked out. I think that was the shtick with that one, which was again very very clever and enjoyable.
yeah.
Um,
So it was just a matter of like, okay, I just have to change the strategy, but I think that's part of what I like about it is like I'm not doing the same strategy for bosses. Like it's different every time. There's always some little change that comes in where it's like, oh well, if you have these characters, you have to kind of look at it this way, or you have to attack it in this way, or so I've really, and then it's having to kind of utilize like, okay, I can't just break them and without having a strategy of having BP or a latent ability set up so that when the break happens, I can hit them with a big attack or something like that.
mhm.
There's just, it's not a strategy game per se, but there's so much strategy to the turn-based combat that
Yeah,
it's incredible. So I've really appreciated, like that's really what's keeping a lot of the interest in for me is that I haven't gotten bored with the combat system at all yet, and in a lot of RPGs I find myself like, okay, I found like the trick or
mhm.
the best way to just kind of cheese through things, and you can't cheese through things here. I've never been like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like I've never like wanted to throw my controller or anything. It's always been very fair, and it's just required maybe a little bit more thinking in every battle.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like just a little bit more thinking, or you just maybe you bring in a different party member, or you make sure they have a different secondary job class. I've never found myself needing to like go back and grind, like and I don't mind grinding in games, like that's fine. But again, as long as you're making sure every party member is kind of like up to like a minimum level, and you get that just by making sure they're in your party, right? Like
Yeah,
not doing any extra walking or extra battles, just make sure they get into your party periodically and you should be good enough. Your party's average level should be good enough to take out any boss. But yeah, then again, a part of that is making sure that you are following through with a different strategy, one that will help you with every boss that you're on. I found one thing that works for me is I'll store up BP with a couple of characters. Try to get Oswald just as buffed up as I can. So one of his abilities lets him buff himself, or sorry, any of the characters, but he unlocks like this advanced magic, which basically makes his spell go off twice. So if you combine that with one of the characters who can just buff elemental damage, it's not Oshed, it might be Casti or I can't remember who exactly it was, but so someone can. Oh, the dancer, Agnea. We haven't even talked. Gosh, we haven't even talked about Agnea.
yeah.
She's
Another unbridled, enthusiastic character.
totally she is. Yeah, I actually do like her. I think she's kind of cute and
Yeah.
charming. But yeah, she's got an ability to buff elemental damage specifically. So I put that on Oswald. I wait till his latent abilities charged up. I've got 4 BP, and I just go to town with that. I kind of doing everything I can to set up this one character. It's almost like you're playing sports and you design specific plays for like your best player, your best hockey player, your best basketball player, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm designing a specific play or a specific scenario, a setup to get my best character the ball or the puck so that they can do like a super shot at the right moment, and gosh, it is so satisfying when that all comes together and you just see like thousands and thousands of points of damage dealt out because you've kind of set up this thing. And it's not always easy to do that because the enemy can bring in kind of other opponents for you to fight, or you the turn order might not cooperate with you. It might take longer to set it up. Maybe someone gets knocked out in that point or during that process. But yeah, every battle has felt compelling. Like, and it's the same combat style the whole time. It's the same
Yeah.
system, but every single battle is a new puzzle. And the first game did this well too. The second game just kind of it does it. I think maybe even adds a little bit more flair to it. So,
Well, I felt in the first game, maybe I've just gotten better at the combat system. I'll grant the game
should
that.
hope
But
so. Yeah.
but the first game, I felt like the bosses took longer than they should have.
Yeah.
Like I found like I'd go into a dungeon and I'm like, okay, like this is taking a little too long. This is taking a little too long. And then it did cross that point of like, okay, is this guy gonna die or what? Like this is a damage sponge at this point. Whereas in this Octopath, like the sequel, I've never come across that. It's like you said earlier in the show, it's where you're like, oh my god, this is like, how many more times do I have to hit this guy to beat him? But right before you get frustrated, that's when you get the final blow in.
That's when you take him down. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I'm trying to think what have we not touched on? We've touched on the music a little bit, characters. Whose stories are you liking so far? So we've talked about kind of usefulness in battle, maybe, and kind of switching people in and out. But whose story are you gravitating towards so far? Like who? I guess kind of maybe who are your top 2 that you really can't wait to see how it goes, and then maybe bottom 2 so far.
Well, first of all, I will say that there's no characters that I'm not intrigued by.
Okay.
Like, so all 8 of them, I'm like, I want to know what happens. Like they're all pretty intriguing to me. Oh man, it's tough because
It is
they
tough.
all got.
I'll give you my bottom one first. I give you my bottom one first as Oshed. I think that so her story is kind of about trying to find these mythical creatures to help her defend her island, basically from some incoming threat.
Yeah.
I think again, you're right. I don't think any of them are bad. I'm just finding that one the least compelling compared to the other ones, which I think are really, really interesting. Right, and hers is just that idea of like kind of bringing the band back together for this ultimate fight. Like we've seen that kind of story before. Whereas I think the other ones, like even if they're a little bit more like down to earth and realistic, like I still the characters can just be so gosh darn charming and plucky, and you can't help but root for them. There's a lot
Yeah,
of characters here where like, how do you not want to see this person succeed? Like
yeah.
Agnea's like that. I think Partitio's like that for me for sure.
I think Casty's my least intriguing, like you said, but compared to everyone else,
Yeah.
only because it's like kind of that traditional like amnesia storyline where it's
Yes, yes, yes.
so I'm like, yeah, it's good. Like, but then there's like obviously some mystery to why she has it, and then even like having that character right off the bat, uh, just she just shows up in a boat or whatever. Like
Yes, right.
there's a lot of intrigue to it, so I'm still interested in what happens. I like the Oswald, almost like the crime mystery element to
Yeah.
his, where it's like he gets framed for murder, and you're trying to figure out, find the guy who did it, kind of the
The
revenge
revenge story, yeah.
story.
He
Yeah,
seems like the most. It's not the darkest, but it seems the most serious, right? I
yeah.
think of all the stories, like
Him
he
and Throne. Throne
yeah, yeah.
is also pretty serious too, where she's. I guess there's some kind of kill collar or the collar must do something to keep her tied down to the black snakes,
Hmm.
to the point where she has to get the keys to get out of it. And so I'm and then like the people that she has to kill, the mother and father, in quotes, of the gang, to get the keys to unlock it, but then they're always like one step ahead of
Of
her so
course,
far.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Throne is good. I don't know if it's in my top two. I'm trying to think. Gosh, I really like Oswald's. I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting. I think
Hakari's chapter 2 was pretty good.
Hakari, just the whole premise of his journey. I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
I don't know how I was surprised by his chapter two. I didn't know that's what was going to happen there.
No, it took me
That
by
guy he's trying
surprise.
to recruit, and then they
Yeah.
work in like the arena type storyline was just really interesting. Um,
Gladiator-esque. That's
Gladiator esque, all the
yeah.
gambling, and then there was kind of that twist at the end. Yeah, really good so far. So I'm back on wanting to maybe kind of power through and see more of his. So I think Akari and Oswald are probably my top two. And then yeah,
I like that
they're
Partitio has Partitio has chapters, but then he also has the merchant quests, which
yeah,
are very intriguing. Like I went to one where so it's called like the scent of commerce is, and he's got like one for almost every the major cities.
yeah.
And there's been a couple where I went into one where there was like a woman working on a ship, and she doesn't want to sell the ship, but gives a price of how much it would be to buy. And I'm like, okay, now I'm saving my money,
That's
to
right.
maybe even to my own detriment, because there's been times where I'm like, I should be really upgrading some of this equipment, but I don't want to spend any money because I'm trying to save up to buy the ship to see what will happen.
Yeah.
And then there's one where he like meets a guy who, I don't think he actually invented the record player, but I think he might have just bought it from someone, or like, so he's got this invention that he doesn't know how to sell, and the guy's like, well, we should put music on it and sell it for that. And now I'm supposed to be finding musicians to bring to
Yeah.
record for
Yeah.
like albums and stuff. So it's just these things that are very interesting, and they're not even like really part of the story per se. They're just this other. I'm hoping they like generate money. That'd
Yeah.
be nice.
I've no idea like how. I mean, it makes sense. Scent of commerce, and he's a merchant. You'd think those would bring in money. There's also the fact that like I don't know how his main stories are going to go, but in his chapter two, he basically is it ends with him wanting to acquire $80 billion or something like
Yeah,
that to
right.
buy this technology. So it's like,
Yeah,
okay, like I don't know how you're going to get that much money considering like I've got like 50,000 in our team's
yeah.
bank right now. So,
Oh,
but
I did complete one of his scent of commerce. So he meets this like mythological or legendary merchant in this one town,
yeah,
and he's supposed to like do this test of finding. He's like, well, if you figure out what my treasure is, I'll give you access to the. He wants to read this manuscript that this guy's written,
that's right.
and so I completed the quest. And what it is you get access to this library with all this back lore of the game. And I'm
Oh,
like,
cool.
oh my god, there's like 15 volumes of books to read, and I'm like, and it's all like backstories of the different towns,
Yeah,
and
that's
different
that's
people and stuff.
fascinating. I
Yeah,
love that stuff. Like I love like we could get really into a game and the game has mechanics that kind of let you unlock more about its world, more about it. Again, it's we see games that have kind of accessible lore that you can read if you are so inclined. But I think that that's a cool reward for a quest. That you do something in the game, and then it's like, okay, you've earned the opportunity to kind of like get even more
Yeah.
into this world if
Oh,
you're so
one of the
fortunate.
books too. I don't know if you've come across. Sometimes you can randomly run into one of the cats.
Yes, yeah, I have. I've beaten
Yeah,
one or two of them, I think.
yeah. So I think they give like a ton of coin if you actually beat them, but they're super fast, so
They're
it's
like
hard
the
to
they're
hit
like
them.
the golden hands in Persona. We've
Yes.
seen a lot of
Yeah.
games like where you have like or a metal slime or something in Dragon
Yeah.
Quest, right? We've seen these types of enemies before.
So one of the books in the library gives you the backstory on why they exist and
Oh,
how
awesome!
to fight and how to bring them out, like
Oh,
how to
really?
attract them and stuff.
That's
So I'm
cool.
like, oh man, this is gonna be useful.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely. If you ever want to
yeah,
do some grinding, I imagine late game there will be some grinding you'll want to get everyone up to, especially if there's like a post game or an epilogue or something like that. You're going to need
yeah.
to grind out the classes and job points and everything like that. We haven't even talked about the job point system yet either, which I think is
I know.
incredibly simple,
Yeah,
but also very elegant, right? That you just acquire job points and you buy whatever abilities you want. And
yeah.
then the price goes up as you buy them, and you if you get all the abilities, you've kind of like mastered that character. But
And
you
then
can
as you buy the abilities, it gives you more abilities on top of, like, when you unlock 3, you get another one, and then when
you
you
get the
unlock
pass yeah
5, you get
you get
another
those
one.
passive abilities that you
Yeah,
can equip, and if you can get passive abilities from all the secondary classes too, so you can
yeah,
kind of mix and match the best passive abilities. Like Oswald has one where he gains extra experience, or he reduces the chances of random encounters, right? Like those passive abilities can be super helpful, right? Even just adding to your stats or whatever. So getting a secondary class, leveling it up a little bit to get those passive abilities. I mean, you're again just adds to that customization of the game, I guess.
yeah. Incredible how many layers there is to this game. Like,
Hmm.
I think I passed 20 hours today,
Yeah,
and I
so
still
so
feel
good
like I'm
there.
just scratching the surface of the game. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I've got so
crazy.
much of the map that I haven't. It's still kind of it's still got that fog of war on top of it. So I haven't seen all the cities yet. Every time I go to a new city, every city feels really unique. It's got that kind of Dragon Quest feel to it, like Dragon Quest 11 did, where every city felt like truly a new world, and a new
Yeah.
little scene or diorama to explore.
And they all
Um,
feel different. Like, you
they
got
do.
like I am never remembering these cities, but I think one, like, Delsti is like the metropolis of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
Like
It's got
this,
that really cool music too, like kind of
yeah,
jazzy cafe jazz kind of style music. It's great.
yeah, and theater, the big theater to go to.
Yeah,
Then there's like the northern city up at the top where it's like everything's cold,
yeah,
and
yeah. Of course.
and there's like it's like a fishing town, and then you got like the where Agnes comes from is more like your kind of medieval villagey type area, just kind of
Yeah,
small town sort of thing, and then you got like the castle, desert castle kind of theme of Hikari with Ku,
yeah.
and oh man, it's got everything. It's incredible.
And the towns themselves have like little puzzles to solve too. For example, I went to the gosh, I think it's called Mont Blanc or something like that. And there it is like
Oh,
a clock or
Montwise, I think.
Montwise, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. And I don't know if that's the one where there's like a clockmaker and you need the clockmaker to come and like work with this material that he's got or something like that. I might even be getting the towns mixed up. But at any rate, there was a town where there's a broken bridge that leads to like a lighthouse or something like that. And so that's one of your side quests, right? Is bring the materials or bring someone to fix this bridge so you can access a new part of the town. I think that's cool too, that the
yeah,
towns kind of open up as you do more of the game, as you figure out more of its puzzles and figure out exactly who's going to come and help you with that side quest. You're going to open up a new tower in the town or a new treasure chest, and just seeing the towns kind of grow a little bit too as you go through them. I think that's really cool.
yeah. Like you said, it's hard to find criticisms. Like, there's
Mhm.
nothing that has really annoyed me or made, like, I can't think of anything where I'm like, oh, I wish they had changed that.
Yeah,
Like, I guess the only thing I could come up with at this point is it maybe would have been nice if we didn't have to be stuck with the one character
yeah,
in the party
yeah.
all the time. That's probably the only thing.
Yeah,
But
and I think that's a reasonable criticism. I get why it is like that, but I also understand, like, it'd be nice to have a little more flexibility there.
yeah,
I
but
wish I wish that the main map screen showed you the different shrines and stuff, like different shrines and caves. I think it shows you a little bit, but I don't know that it kind of marks it on your
no,
map and like tells you the name of it. And so you kind of have to go back. Not that the map screen, not that the overworld is all that large. You can easily go back to a town and explore around, but I just wish that more of the main map, as you opened it up, I wish it kind of had more landmarks to it, or it just kind of populated or saved more of the special places you went to. Um, I think it
or
only does that to a small extent.
if they had like I guess the other thing is I wish there was mini maps of the city, because
Sure.
you get the overworld map and it's like here's where all the cities, but then you don't actually get a map of the city itself. So
That's
when
right.
you go there, you can use your radar to kind of like, okay, there's a save over there, or there's a uh, I've been using the shrines where you get the secondary jobs. I actually have like a little shield marking so that
Yes,
there's one
right.
one there now. But if like if I want to find like a cafe to switch chat characters, I find myself, I'm like, okay, where's the cafe in this town? And I'm like running around in circles looking for the cafe. It's like I
Yeah.
wish it was marked, at least on my radar, if not an actual little map that I could open and be like, okay, in this city it's over here or something.
I mean, gosh, we are really doing the tiniest of nitpicks
Yeah.
here. Like these are, it's really nothing. Like
Oh yeah,
it is an
it-
absolutely stellar game. Like
yeah.
I can't imagine that anyone who is into turn-based RPGs would not just fall head over heels for this game. Um, I've seen some criticism about kind of the blurriness of the art style, and I don't, it doesn't, if it's there, I don't really notice it or it doesn't bother me. But I know that I've seen. I think Kat Bailey was one who had pointed that out on Twitter,
Yeah.
and whenever someone says it to me, I kind of look for it. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. But it's not something that really bothers me. I
No,
still like
like
the
to me
visuals very much.
it's clearly like an art direction thing where it's
Yeah.
like they're trying to give the game scope. Like the one of the things I think one particular spots I remember was there's Hikari. I think it's Hikari and Agnia have a joint chapter, or it might not even be a chapter. No, I think it is a chapter. One of the joint chapters
Mm.
where they meet this like traveling musician and they go on top of this hill and she's like playing music to the moon, and you kind of see like the little village or town behind them that gets blurred and stuff. But it's like, well, that's like the art direct. Like
Yeah, it's doing
you
that on
want to
purpose,
focus
right?
on them, and you're supposed to focus on them and the moon,
Yeah.
and they're blurring they're blurring the stuff behind it. It's
Mm.
like camera that they're trying, they're specifically wanting you to look at something. So
Yeah.
it's I get the blurriness, but to me it's funny because the when everything is in focus, I can kind of I sometimes I get annoyed by it. Like
Mm.
when I did played the Sea of Stars demo, one of the things that bothered me was is that it's like, well, it's hard to tell the background from the foreground.
Hmm.
Like everything is looks the same. Like there's no depth. I don't mind the depth because it's like I can understand where the playable area is compared to the background. Like it's so
Yeah,
I'm
in an Octopath, like you get a better sense of where you're going, or kind of where you're focused on going, because yeah, it is a little bit easier to see, it's a little bit clearer, and then the outskirts of the screen or your viewpoint are a little bit blurry as you kind of move past them, and then it makes sense. Like you don't really need to see a place that you've already been to or that you're leaving behind, right? So that kind of
yeah
makes sense, and yeah, so just, again, smallish kind of things to complain about, and definitely not going to bother everybody.
yeah.
Um, gosh, I was thinking about, okay, I'm gonna get the platinum trophy, which is one of the reasons I got it on PS5. But I think it just turned out so well being able to play this on a large screen. I play so many games on Switch, so I'm really kind of just appreciating playing this on a 65-inch screen TV. The quick load times on PS5 are great. I can't really do any comparison because I didn't play the Switch version or even the Switch demo. I went into the game fresh. But yeah, the PS5 version, I have absolutely no complaints about. Like, I think it's a great place to play the game. Just in terms of visuals, in terms of just how snappy everything is, it's great.
Yeah.
I haven't got, funny, they just haven't gotten that many trophies, and I'm making a point of not looking up what the trophies are. I don't really want to be spoiled and everything.
Mm.
But what it's doing is it's forcing me to use more of the path actions. So I already popped a trophy for like scrutinizing 100 people. So now
Yeah.
I'm trying to like mug 100 people.
Yeah.
Like whatever Casty's one is, I can't remember, but it's similar to scrutinize.
Yeah.
Steal from 100 people. Like I'm just trying to use a variety of them, not just to acquire items and information in the towns, but also just to pop those trophies too. So
Yeah.
I'm having fun doing that as well.
I've loved playing on the Steam Deck. It looks absolutely gorgeous on the Steam Deck. It's always like locked at 60 FPS, so it looks great. I actually played on my computer today just once because I wanted to capture some footage.
Hmm.
So I went into the settings and I'm like turning everything to the max, and then it's like 120 frames per second. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh gosh.
yeah, sure, give me that. And I was like, couldn't believe how buttery smooth the game looks on my PC. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, there's no question this is like a visual spectacle of a game, and I really do hope by the end of the year we do get some talk about game of the year, certainly RPG of the year. Obviously, there's going to be some heavy hitters in terms of RPGs coming out this year,
Yeah.
but I worry that Octopath Traveler coming out in the first few months of the year could be one of those games that just kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. Like we were talking about sales earlier. I do hope it has that longer tail, and they keep kind of talking about it, coming back to it, and
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I feel like Team Asano is an automatic buy now.
yeah. Oh, it's got to be right. And they haven't really missed, and if they ever have, they improve on the next one.
Yeah.
Like again. We have to give Octopath Traveler, the first game, some credit for being the first game in this new art style where like you're focusing so much on trying to be retro and trying to just do something new visually and even do something new narratively, right? We haven't
Yep.
seen a game where you have 8 separate protagonists that have their own individual stories, and so now you've got the sequel that can do a better job of weaving their stories together and weaving their paths together. But the first game was kind of a trailblazer, right? And so, obviously, this game was going to improve and just be better in every way. And I think that seems to be coming to pass.
Yep. No, I agree. Well, this is the guy who gave up on the first one, makes fun of it relentlessly for years, and now I'm like, you know what? If Octopath Traveler 2 was going to falter in any way, I would have picked up on it. But it's like, no, this game is incredible. Anyone who, like you said, anyone who's into turn-based games, like this is a must-buy. Like there's not a whole lot of games where I'm like, you know what, you should. This is a game you have to play. It's like, no, this kind of is one of those games. Like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
there's too much good going on. Like you don't want to miss out. I put it up there with like the Persona 5s, the Final Fantasy 7 remakes. Like this is one of those games. It's hard to, you are missing out if you're not playing it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very just pleasantly surprised that they were able to follow through and maintain what I think really worked in the original, polish, with the things that didn't add on to it, and just deliver such a stellar package with this game. Yeah, again, we're only 20 odd hours in, but I can only see it kind of getting better from here. I think the openings of the stories are really strong. Like all the characters have like compelling reasons for you to want to see how their journeys end.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a problem with the structure of this game. Like the fact that I might do Hikari chapter 1 and then do 15 other chapters or 14 other chapters and then go to Hikari chapter 2. I don't think that's a problem because the chapters are not that long, right? Not a
No.
lot happens in each one because it just in terms of narrative, not a lot happens. A lot of the chapters are taken up with exploration, talking to people in the town, doing your path actions to maybe convince or persuade or move somebody. And then, a very small, slight dungeon. They're very small dungeons, which I think works really well for this game. The dungeons are incredibly manageable. There's probably a couple treasure chests, maybe a couple floors, and then you get to the save point and the boss. They're very, very bite-sized. And the fact that they don't drag on, I think, is a big plus here. Is just so by the time you get to the end of a chapter, not a ton of stuff has happened, but what has happened can be very interesting. Like you'll still get some kind of revelation after you've taken out the boss. Maybe that they'll admit something, or there'll be kind of like a conclusion to the chapter that tells you like, okay, here's kind of what happened, and here's what's going to happen next, or here's the next place we have to go to continue this story. So it's not like you need a recap or anything like that. I'm going like 5 to 7 days between seeing a character's next chapter, and I'm not feeling like, oh, I totally forgot what happened at the beginning. You don't. just because there isn't a lot of narrative for each one. They're all very just bite-sized, digestible, and I think that presentation is still working here.
Yeah, well, and they're all engaging, so
Sure.
it's not like you've had this. Oh, I had this forgettable. Hikari had a forgettable chapter 1, and now I'm into chapter 2 and forgot what happened. It's like no, like they all have an interesting and engaging story, so you're remembering it even if it's a few days before you see the next piece.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is probably a good spot to leave off. Like I said, I'm sure we're going to be doing more episodes on it in the future. We'll probably, for sure, a spoiler cast. I would have to say.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up after we finish the game. Let everyone know our thoughts, talk about the ending, all that stuff. I am very curious how this game's going to wrap up. My understanding is that there are some interesting things that happen in the second half that it might be just curveballs, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that what's nice is that we can kind of take our time with this game because April doesn't really have any like must play games. Like it's really not till May and June that, at least so far, that have been announced. Like I feel like we've got some time to let this one sizzle a little bit. So
yeah, especially since I've already played Trails to Azure. So
yeah, exactly. And I pushed off that review to Donald. I'm like, okay, I just can't. I can't do that when I'm really getting into Octopath here, and I think that was a good decision. I'd love to play Trails to Azure at some point, but I feel like just with the fact that we might have one or two more Trails games coming this year, that one might just fall to the wayside, and I might just go straight to Reverie instead. But
yeah,
we'll see. One game I was going to mention that I am thinking about a lot playing is Resident Evil 4 Remake. Like that's one of my favorite games, and the remake it sounds great. It sounds like they're not overhauling it in terms of gameplay, but maybe making some smart changes here and there. And yeah, I'm kind of patiently waiting for those reviews to come out and see. And if it reviews anywhere near the first game, I'm probably gonna have to play that one too. So
when's the release date for that one?
March 24th. So we've got a few weeks.
Oh, it's coming up.
But it is, it is kind of sneaking up there. So so looking forward to maybe playing that as well. But yeah, just Octopath is going to be kind of top of mind for the next little while here for sure.
Yep.
I guess we got a lot. We have some extra plugs to do. So I've been thinking about that all week since I mentioned that we were going to put episodes on YouTube. So we're back on YouTube. So you can find our podcast on YouTube. It's just strictly for people like listening on YouTube or downloading YouTube videos to just to listen to or just to have on. Maybe I'll throw it on the TV or something like that. You can do that. So if you are so inclined and you check us out on YouTube, please leave us a like. Consider subscribing to the channel. There's that notification bell you can hit that lets you know when an episode comes up. So that would be awesome to do any or all of those things. We're still on Spotify. We're still on your podcast app of choice on your phone. So lots of places to find us. Leave us a review. 5 stars is awesome. Leave us comments, feedback, anything like that. All of that totally welcome. I'm not sure if we have an immediate plan for next week, but we do have there's some kind of direct style presentations coming up that might be worth talking about. I think Capcom has one, and Level 5 has one coming up as well. I think those both might be tomorrow.
Really?
They're really soon. Yeah. So might be some news to share there next week. But we'll be back next week with something good for sure. If you haven't played Octopath Traveler, like let's end with this. Like you got to play this game. Play the demo. If it doesn't hook you, I'm not sure what's wrong with you. But this is a great kind of classic RPG that Dave and I are just enthralled by. So,
yep.
But that'll do us for this week's episode. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.